The morning sun rose over the Wyoming plains like a promise, gold spilling across the dusty town as church bells tolled with a stubborn, joyful rhythm. Clara Bell tightened the silk ribbon around her bouquet, fingers trembling despite the calm mask she wore. Everything she had planned, every flower, every seat, every vow, was falling into place with the precision of a carefully built house of cards. Today, she wasn't just the rancher's eldest daughter. Today, she was the bride of Duke Wyatt Langston, the man who had sworn she was the only woman who'd ever made him forget the road. The chapel courtyard buzzed with life. Horses snorted and stomped near the hitching posts, their reins glinting in the sun. Musicians tuned their brass instruments under a bunting of red and cream flags fluttering like eager hearts. Children chased each other between hay bales while women adjusted their bonnets, gossiping in excited clusters. The scent of cinnamon pies, wildflowers, and saddle leather mingled in the warm breeze. Clara moved among the guests with measured grace, her ivory satin dress sweeping the ground like whispered promises, lace gloves clinging to her wrists like fragile armor. Uncle Hank, already flushed from morning whiskey, shouted his toast rehearsal from the steps. "I ain't never trusted a man with slick hair," he declared, grinning wide. "But if Duke don't run off today, maybe he's got more grit than I thought." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Clara smiled, though the humor barely touched the unease fluttering beneath her ribs. She glanced toward the chapel doors, expecting to see Duke among the arriving riders, his broad shoulders cutting a proud figure. He wasn't there. Her maid of honor adjusted the veil over Clara's auburn hair, whispering, "You're glowing." "I'm sweating," Clara muttered back, forcing a light laugh. But her eyes scanned the crowd again, searching for a glimpse of his familiar stride. For years, Clara had fought to be seen. Lila, her younger sister, with her bright smile and easy charm, had always drawn attention like sugar draws flies. Clara worked the land, fixed fences, managed accounts, always in the background, always reliable. Duke had been different. Or at least, she'd believed so. He'd chosen her, not Lila. He'd courted her beneath the cottonwoods, whispered dreams of shared futures, promised partnership rather than possession. Today was supposed to be the culmination of all those nights she'd dared to believe in something more. She rehearsed her steps down the aisle once more, the wooden floor echoing softly under her boots. She pictured Duke at the altar, his smile when he saw her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Her heart ached with a sweetness that bordered on pain. Then she noticed something odd. The groomsmen gathered near the barn, exchanging uneasy glances. One of them muttered, "Where's the Duke?" Another answered, said he needed a moment. Her breath caught. Lila was missing too. Clara turned slowly, eyes narrowing. The band played a bright tune, masking the uneasy thud in her chest. She told herself not to be foolish. Pre-wedding nerves, that's all. But the laughter reached her then. Faint, muffled, drifting from behind the stable. She hesitated only a moment before following the sound. Her dress snagged against a loose nail, tearing a small strip of satin. She barely noticed. Each step toward the stable thickened the air, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Sunlight poured through the barn's gaps, casting thin blades of gold across the dusty floor. Clara pushed the heavy wooden door open, its hinges groaning in protest. And there, in that sharp beam of light, she saw them. Duke's hands cupped Lila's face as he kissed her, slow and hungry, the kind of kiss that didn't belong to confusion or accidents. Lila clung to him, her white bridesmaid's dress glowing like a cruel mirror of Clara's own. The world tilted. The barn swayed. For a heartbeat, there was no sound but the distant bell and the rasp of her breath. She had imagined betrayal before, small, harmless, fleeting, but this was something else entirely. This was a knife slid between ribs, deliberate and slow. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers, scattering roses into the dirt. A petal stuck to her boot. Another caught on Duke's jacket. He jerked back when he saw her, face pale beneath the tan. "Clara." She didn't let him finish. Her voice came out hoarse but sharp, like splintered glass. "On our wedding day." Lila's painted lips parted. "Clara, wait." She didn't wait. She turned on her heel, satin dragging through dust, heart hammering against the cage of her ribs. She didn't cry. Not yet. The shock was too complete for tears. Outside, the music played on, unaware. Clara pushed through the chapel doors, veil slipping from her hair as she entered. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. She ripped the veil from her head and let it drop onto the aisle. The sound it made, soft, final, rang louder than any gunshot. Dozens of eyes locked onto her. Duke and Lila scrambled out behind her. But the damage was already done. Sheriff Weller leaned toward the preacher and muttered, "Well, this'll make Sunday lunch awkward." Clara drew in a breath that tasted of dust and shame and fury. She looked at the guests, at the preacher, at the flowers she had chosen herself, at the wooden cross draped in white cloth. She felt something break, not her heart that had shattered in the barn, but a barrier inside her. "You came for a wedding," she said, her voice trembling but rising. "Looks like you're staying for a showdown." The band faltered. A child dropped a bonnet. The sky above seemed to dim as a thin wind whispered through the courtyard, rattling the flags overhead. She didn't wait for Duke's excuses or her sister's tears. The moment had become something larger than all of them. A quiet explosion that would echo through every corner of her life from this day forward. For the first time in years, everyone was looking at Clara Bell. And this time, she wasn't the supporting character in someone else's story. She was the storm rolling in. And the wedding bells kept ringing, stubborn and bright, as if mocking the silence they left behind. Clara didn't remember mounting her horse, only the wild thrum of hooves beneath her as she fled the chapel. The town blurred into streaks of color and dust, laughter and whispers dissolving into the wind. Her dress whipped around her legs like a wounded flag, each tear in the satin a reminder of what had broken inside her. The plains opened before her, endless and harsh, their emptiness mirroring the hollow space in her chest. She rode until the sound of bells disappeared, replaced by the dry rasp of wind over brittle grass. When she finally slowed, she found herself on the edge of a shallow canyon, the earth carved into jagged lines by time and storms. She dismounted stiffly, boots sinking into the sandy ground. Her breath came in ragged bursts. She stared across the wide expanse as clouds gathered in the distance, dark bruises spreading across the sky. Her hands clenched into fists. A sound tore from her throat, half sob, half roar, echoing against the canyon walls like some wild creature announcing its hurt to the world. Behind her, hoofbeats approached. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Duke's voice carried across the wind. "Clara, please stop." Her stomach twisted at the sound. He had always sounded sure of himself, commanding, the kind of man who made people listen. Now he sounded desperate. She didn't move. Lila's voice followed, thinner, trembling. "Clara, we need to talk." She turned slowly. Duke reined in his stallion a few yards away, Lila clutching the back of his saddle like a frightened child. Their presence filled the space like a storm cloud threatening rain. "You followed me," Clara said, her voice flat. Duke dismounted quickly, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Because I need you to understand. What happened back there?" "What happened," she cut in, "is that I walked into a barn and found my groom kissing my sister." Lila slid off the horse, face blotchy from crying. "It wasn't planned. I don't even know how it happened." Clara stepped toward them, boots crunching over the dirt. Each step tightened the coil of fury inside her. "You don't accidentally kiss someone like that. You don't accidentally betray blood on the day I was supposed to marry him." Duke's jaw clenched. "It was a mistake." Her laugh came sharp and humorless. "Then you've got a talent for big ones." For a heartbeat, the wind stilled, and all three stood in the charged silence of people who'd run out of lies but hadn't yet faced the truth. She moved closer until she stood between them, eyes blazing. "I trusted you both. You were supposed to be the two people who'd never hurt me like this." Lila reached for her hand. "Clara, please." She yanked away. "Don't." She looked at Duke then, really looked, at the man she had believed would stand beside her, build a life with her. All she saw now was someone who had thought her love was secure enough to take for granted. "If you wanted a honeymoon with her," Clara said softly, "you should have eloped and spared me the dress." The words hit like a slap. Duke flinched. Lila dropped her gaze. Then a sharp sound split the moment, the crack of distant gunfire. Clara's head snapped toward the canyon ridge. Dust plumed along the edge, silhouettes moving against the sky. Her instincts, honed from years on the ranch, recognized danger before her mind caught up. "Riders," she whispered. The first bullet struck the ground near Duke's boots, throwing up dirt. Another whistled past Clara's ear. The world narrowed into sudden urgency. "Get down!" Duke shouted, drawing his revolver. Clara dove behind a cluster of rocks, pulling Lila with her. Gunfire erupted from the ridge, sharp and echoing. She glimpsed at least 4 men, faces half covered with bandanas, rifles glinting in the fading light. Of course they'd come. The town wedding had been a spectacle. Any outlaw with half a brain could guess that travelers would be distracted, pockets full. Clara's flight into the wilderness had given them a smaller, easier target. Duke returned fire clumsily, crouching low. Lila cowered beside Clara, shaking uncontrollably. Clara's heartbeat steadied into something fierce. She had no wedding now, no illusions left. What she did have was the rancher's grit her father had drilled into her since childhood. "Give me the gun," she said sharply. Duke hesitated, eyes flicking toward her torn dress. "Now, Duke." Something in her tone cut through his confusion. He handed it over. She checked the chamber with quick, practiced motions, then leaned out to fire a clean shot. One outlaw ducked back behind the ridge. "You can shoot." Duke muttered, incredulous. She didn't look at him. "I can do a lot of things you never noticed." The outlaws advanced, spreading wide to flank them. Clara barked orders without thinking. "They're trying to box us in. Move left. Use the rocks for cover. Lila, stay low and keep your head down." She shifted positions, firing strategically, forcing their attackers to keep distance. Duke followed her lead, less graceful but determined. The canyon filled with the staccato rhythm of gunfire and the acrid tang of gunpowder. Clara's mind sharpened with every shot, every decision. The pain of betrayal burned hot beneath her ribs, but it fueled her now, gave her strength. She had spent years being overlooked, underestimated. Not anymore. After a tense exchange, the outlaws realized their easy ambush had soured. One shouted something she couldn't catch, and within moments they retreated toward the ridge, disappearing into the gathering storm. The sudden quiet rang louder than the gunfire had. Clara stood slowly, breath heaving, dress torn, hair wild from the wind. She looked like a woman forged in the storm rather than broken by it. Duke stared at her, off flickering through his guilt. Lila didn't meet her eyes. Clara handed the revolver back, wiping her hands on the ruined satin. "We should head back before they change their minds." No one argued. By the time they returned to town, lanterns were being lit along the main street. Word of the chaos had spread faster than wildfire. People gathered near the chapel, murmuring as they saw Clara ride in ahead of Duke and Lila, face streaked with dirt but spine straight as a rifle barrel. She dismounted, walked straight up the chapel steps, and turned to face them both. The crowd hushed. Duke opened his mouth to speak, but she silenced him with a raised hand. "This ends here," she said, voice carrying over the courtyard. "The wedding's off." Gasps rippled through the guests. She pulled the ring from her finger and pressed it into Duke's palm. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She turned to Lila, whose eyes brimmed with tears. "I forgive you," Clara said, her tone steady. "But I won't forget." Then she faced the crowd, the chapel, the life she had planned so carefully. She wasn't a bride anymore. She was something stronger. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Clara stepped off the porch and into the street, leaving the shattered remnants of her old life behind. Somewhere beyond the storm, a future waited that she would shape with her own hands. And though the wedding day had ended, her story had only just begun.